September 1944, Rhine Valley, Germany. A Wehrmacht major named Hans Dietrich watches from a captured American observation post as American soldiers line up with their metal mess kits before enormous mobile field kitchens that have accompanied the American army as it advanced progressively across France and into German territory itself. The field kitchens are remarkable pieces of military engineering and logistical design. Massive vehicles equipped with multiple cooking stations, equipped with sophisticated heating systems, capable of preparing hot meals for thousands of soldiers simultaneously in challenging field conditions. Smoke rises from metal chimneys as professional cooks inside the kitchens work systematically and efficiently. The smell of beef stew, fresh bread, and hot coffee wafts across the military positions, creating an aroma Dietrich has not encountered in months. American soldiers eat with evident satisfaction and pleasure, consuming portions that seem impossible in their abundance and generosity. Some soldiers have seconds, some receive desserts, some receive fresh fruit that Dietrich has not seen in months despite his rank and position. The contrast between what he observes American soldiers eating and what he knows German soldiers are eating creates cognitive dissonance that troubles him profoundly and deeply. Dietrich has commanded German soldiers throughout the war. He understands their courage and their dedication to duty. He also understands that they are hungry. Not the minor hunger of wanting more food or preferring variety, the systematic hunger of malnutrition and caloric deficit, the desperate hunger of soldiers receiving inadequate calories to sustain their bodies through combat operations in bitter cold weather. The story of Wehrmacht officers observing American field kitchens and American soldier rations during 1944 represents one of the most psychologically devastating realizations that German military officers would experience during the war's final phase and collapse. The contrast between American provisioning systems and German provisioning systems revealed fundamental differences in industrial capacity, logistical organization, resource availability, and military philosophy. The American field kitchens represented not merely better organization but manifestation of American abundance and American commitment to soldier welfare that contrasted sharply with German military reality and harsh circumstances. German soldiers were hungry continuously. American soldiers were well-fed consistently. The difference represented more than mere difference in available food quantities. It represented difference in military systems fundamentally, in industrial capacity, systematically, in strategic vision, comprehensively, and in what military leadership believed soldiers deserved ethically and practically. The recognition of this contrast struck German officers with force because it could not be explained away as a propaganda or exaggeration or wartime rumors. The contrast was observable directly, measurable precisely, and undeniable completely to any observer with eyes. The German Wehrmacht had maintained field kitchens throughout the war, mobile units known affectionately to troops as Gulaschkanone, goulash cannons, because they prepared hearty stews and soups that had sustained German soldiers through years of warfare and campaigns. These field kitchens represented the German military's commitment to providing hot meals to soldiers in field conditions despite logistical challenges. However, the German system faced increasing difficulties as the war progressed, and German military supply lines became increasingly fragile and vulnerable. The destruction of German transportation infrastructure through Allied bombing campaigns created chronic supply difficulties systematically. Rail lines were destroyed regularly by bombing raids. Road networks were damaged continuously by American and British air forces. Fuel became increasingly scarce, limiting movement and limiting transportation of supplies across vast distances. The German military was stretched across multiple theaters. Simultaneously, the Eastern Front against overwhelming Soviet forces, the Western Front against American and British forces, defensive operations within German territory itself. The distribution of available resources across these multiple fronts meant that no single front received adequate supplies. German soldiers received fewer calories than optimal for sustained combat operations. German soldiers received less variety in diet and nutrition. German soldiers faced increasing likelihood of receiving no hot meal on days when supply lines were disrupted by enemy action or destroyed infrastructure. The rations available to German soldiers by September 1944 were substantially below the levels required for optimal physical and psychological functioning under intense combat stress and cold conditions. Official German military ration scales specified approximately 2,700 calories daily for soldiers in active combat zones with heavy physical demands. However, actual delivery frequently fell far short of official specifications and published standards. Combat units reported receiving perhaps 1,200 to 1,500 calories daily, when supplies could be delivered at all. Entire regiments reported receiving no rations for multiple days consecutively, as supply lines were disrupted by enemy action or by continuous retreat before superior American forces advancing rapidly. The food that was delivered was frequently of poor quality and minimal nutritional value. Bread was often moldy, or stale, or both, despite efforts to prevent spoilage. Meat was often gristly or fatty with low nutritional value and poor palatability. Vegetables were frequently limited to turnips or potatoes preserved in ways that lost nutritional value through storage and processing. The situation had deteriorated progressively throughout 1944, as American forces advanced across France and into Germany, and as German military supply systems collapsed completely under weight of continuous combat operations and invasion. Major Dietrich had commanded a regiment of German soldiers for approximately 2 years of continuous combat. He had watched the physical condition of his men deteriorate progressively month after month. Soldiers who had entered service weighing 75 to 80 kilograms had lost 20 to 30 kilograms through inadequate nutrition and caloric deficit. Soldiers who had possessed normal skin tone and healthy appearance had developed the hollow cheeks and skeletal frames characteristic of malnutrition. Soldiers who had possessed normal strength and endurance had become weak, prone to exhaustion after minimal exertion or physical activity. Medical officers reported increasing incidence of diseases associated with malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies systematically. Soldiers were susceptible to infections and diseases. Soldiers experienced slower recovery from wounds and injuries. Soldiers experienced psychological effects of hunger and malnutrition, difficulty concentrating, emotional dysregulation, difficulty maintaining discipline and morale. Dietrich understood that his soldiers were not merely hungry in the way that civilians experiencing food scarcity might be hungry abstractly. His soldiers were experiencing systematic starvation while engaged in active combat operations against determined enemy. The combination created conditions that undermined combat effectiveness and soldier welfare simultaneously. The American field kitchens that Dietrich observed represented fundamentally different approach to soldier provisioning and soldier welfare philosophy. The kitchens were equipped with multiple cooking stations that allowed simultaneous preparation of large quantities of food efficiently. The kitchens possessed sophisticated equipment that ensured food could be cooked properly even in challenging field conditions. The kitchens were accompanied by robust supply systems that ensured adequate food was available continuously and reliably. American soldiers received hot meals prepared with care and professional skill. American soldiers received adequate portions that provided satiation and satisfaction. American soldiers received variety in diet, different preparations of meat, different vegetables, different desserts, different breads. American soldiers received approximately 3,600 to 4,500 calories daily through combination of field kitchen meals and supplementary rations provided systematically. The caloric content alone represented significant advantage over German soldiers receiving fraction of calories. The quality of food represented additional advantage beyond mere quantity. The consistency of supply represented further advantage, ensuring soldiers could count on receiving meals. Dietrich obtained one of the American ration boxes that had been captured during recent combat operations. Inside the box he found items that seemed almost surreal compared to German rations and German standards. Canned meat that was actually recognizable as beef, rather than unidentifiable gristly material. Hard biscuits that were not rock hard but possessed reasonable texture for eating and chewing. A chocolate bar for morale and energy. Cigarettes for German soldiers who smoked. Instant coffee that could be mixed with hot water quickly. Matches for starting fires. Toilet paper for basic sanitation. The collection of items represented not merely food but acknowledgement of soldier needs beyond basic nutrition and survival. The American military had equipped ration boxes with items that recognized soldier comfort and soldier morale as important considerations. The German military ration boxes contained only food and nothing else. The American boxes contained food supplemented by additional items that made soldier life more bearable and more humane. The recognition of this difference struck Dietrich with force and clarity. It represented fundamental philosophical difference between how American military valued soldier welfare and how German military valued soldier welfare in practice. The American field kitchens served meals according to strict schedule and systematic organization. Breakfast at designated time each morning, lunch at designated time each day, dinner at designated time each evening. The schedule ensured that American soldiers received regular nutrition and predictable meal times. The regularity contributed to physical health and psychological well-being of troops. The German system attempted similar scheduling but frequently failed due to supply disruptions beyond control. German soldiers never knew whether they would receive meal at designated time or receive nothing. Sometimes meals arrived as scheduled. Sometimes supplies failed to arrive due to transportation problems. Sometimes soldiers received instructions to fast because supplies had been disrupted or destroyed. The uncertainty created psychological stress beyond the physical stress of hunger. Soldiers could not plan their energy expenditure based on assumption of receiving regular meals. Soldiers had to conserve energy in case meals did not arrive and prepare mentally for deprivation. The psychological burden of uncertainty combined with physical burden of hunger created conditions that severely undermined soldier effectiveness and morale in combat. Major Dietrich documented his observations regarding American field kitchens and American ration systems in detailed reports submitted to German military headquarters. His reports were not merely descriptions of American supply system organization. His reports were implicit recognition that German military was losing competition not merely in combat but in fundamental provisioning of soldiers at basic level. If American military could afford to feed soldiers at levels of 3,600 to 4,500 calories daily, then American military possessed industrial and logistical capacity that German military could not match or overcome. If American military could afford to include supplementary items in ration boxes beyond basic food, then American military possessed resource surplus and abundance that German military did not possess. The realization that American military was materially superior extended beyond weapons and equipment into basic soldier welfare and nutrition. The realization created despair among German officers who understood implications completely. German soldiers were starving, while American soldiers were well-fed. This asymmetry represented fundamental military advantage that affected soldier morale, soldier effectiveness, and soldier capability to sustain combat operations. The German military had been forced to adapt its provisioning system throughout the war in response to changing circumstances and deteriorating supply situation. Early in the war, the blitzkrieg strategy of rapid advance had created problems for field kitchens that could not keep pace with advancing combat units. Combat units would advance faster than supply lines could move and keep up. Field kitchens would arrive late or not at all. Soldiers would go days without hot meals and eat cold rations instead. The German military had developed the iron ration system to address this problem comprehensively. Each soldier carried emergency rations designed to sustain him for several days if field kitchens could not provide hot meals. The iron rations consisted of hard bread, preserved meat, and other shelf-stable items that could be consumed without preparation. However, the iron rations were designed for emergencies and temporary situations, not for sustained consumption. Extended consumption of iron rations created monotony and reduced nutritional adequacy significantly. By 1944, many German soldiers were living primarily on iron rations. As supply lines became increasingly disrupted and broken, the American field kitchens moved with American armies as the Americans advanced progressively through France and into Germany. However, the American field kitchens were supported by logistical systems that ensured adequate supply of ingredients and fuel consistently. American supply lines extended from ports in France through supply depots to forward areas systematically. The supply system was organized with American military efficiency and American resource availability. American supply trucks moved food continuously from depots to field kitchens. American supply depots possessed adequate stocks of food items and ingredients. American supply depots possessed adequate fuel for cooking operations. The system functioned even under conditions of combat stress and rapid advance into Germany. When supply lines were disrupted temporarily, American soldiers fell back to supplementary rations, C rations, K rations, or other prepared rations. However, supplementary rations were designed to supplement field kitchen meals. not replace them entirely. American soldiers did not subsist entirely on supplementary rations the way German soldiers were increasingly forced to do. The contrast became increasingly visible as American forces advanced deeper into Germany itself. German soldiers defending German homeland observed American soldiers receiving regular hot meals, while German soldiers received increasingly sporadic meals, as German supply system collapsed completely. The psychological impact on German soldiers was profound and undeniable. How could they be expected to fight effectively when they were hungry while their opponents were well-fed? How could morale be maintained when soldiers observed that their military leadership could not provide adequate food while American military leadership clearly could? The contrast between observable American provision of meals and German inability to provide meals created despair and undermined German soldier motivation. Some German soldiers began surrendering rather than continuing to fight against apparently well-fed and well-equipped American forces. The promise of American field rations, the recognition that American soldiers were well-fed, represented incentive to cease fighting and accept capture. For German soldiers suffering malnutrition and starvation, the prospect of capture and American rations represented improvement in immediate circumstances. The American field kitchens employed trained cooks who prepared food with skill and care and professional knowledge. The cooks understood nutrition and food preparation techniques. The kitchens possessed equipment that allowed proper cooking of food systematically. The kitchens possessed variety of ingredients that allowed diverse menu preparation. Menus varied throughout the week to provide variety in soldier diet. Menus were planned to ensure nutritional adequacy and balanced nutrition. Fresh bread was baked regularly in field kitchens. Coffee was prepared in massive quantities and served continuously throughout the day. Vegetables were prepared fresh when available and preserved properly. Meat was cooked properly to maximize nutritional value and palatability. Desserts were prepared, including puddings and baked goods. The result was soldier food that was not merely adequate but actually palatable and satisfying. American soldiers ate meals that were not merely nutrition but actual food that provided satisfaction and morale boost beyond mere physical nourishment. German field kitchens similarly employed trained cooks and possessed reasonably sophisticated equipment for the time. However, the German kitchens operated under severe material constraints that limited operations. Ingredients were limited to basic staples. Variety was minimal and monotonous. Meat was frequently inadequate in both quantity and quality. Vegetables were limited to what could be preserved through storage. The result was soldier food that was monotonous and nutritionally inadequate. German soldiers ate meals that provided minimal nutrition and minimal satisfaction. The monotony of diet combined with inadequate quantity created psychological burden beyond physical burden of hunger. Soldiers facing monotonous, inadequate meals lost appetite and lost motivation to eat, even when meals were available. Major Dietrich reflected on what he had observed and what it meant for German military prospects and eventual outcome. American military was not merely winning battles through superior tactics or superior equipment alone. American military was winning through superior provisioning and superior resource availability fundamentally. American soldiers were well-fed and well-supplied. German soldiers were hungry and undersupplied. The difference represented fundamental asymmetry in military capability that extended beyond combat operations into basic soldier welfare and nutrition. The realization that Germany could not provide adequate food for soldiers while America could provide abundant food suggested that German military could not sustain warfare at intensity and duration that American military could sustain. The recognition created logical conclusion that Germany faced inevitable defeat if warfare continued. The only variable was how long the conflict would continue and how many more casualties would be incurred before Germany accepted inevitable defeat. The awareness of American abundance reached German population as well as German military forces. German civilians observed American soldiers and American occupation forces consuming food in quantities that seemed obscene compared to German civilian rationing. German civilians observed American field kitchens providing meals to American soldiers. German civilians observed American military distribution of food to German civilian population once occupation began. The contrast between American abundance and German scarcity became increasingly apparent to German population. Some German civilians began to question whether continued warfare made sense if defeat would result in occupation by nation that could afford to feed occupiers and occupied alike. The recognition of American abundance contributed to German willingness to accept eventual surrender and to cooperate with American occupation forces. The logistics system supporting American field kitchens represented American military organization and American resource availability comprehensively. Ships brought food from America to European ports continuously. Trains transported food from ports to supply depots throughout European theater. Trucks transported food from depots to field kitchens systematically. The entire system operated with American efficiency and American organization and American resource commitment. The system ensured that field kitchens never lacked basic supplies. The system ensured that variety of food items was available for meal preparation. The system ensured that American soldiers received regular hot meals. The logistics system itself represented significant military advantage over German military, which lacked transportation resources to maintain similar system. The recognition among German military leadership that soldier provisioning represented military asymmetry, contributing to likely German defeat manifested in various ways. Some German officers began advocating for negotiated settlement of conflict to avoid further casualties. Some German officers recommended focus on defending German territory against invasion, rather than continuing offensive operations. Some German officers recognized that continued warfare would result in continued starvation of German soldiers, while American soldiers remained well-fed and well-supplied. The logical conclusion was that continued warfare served no military purpose if defeat was inevitable. The recognition contributed to collapse of German military morale and German military effectiveness as war progressed toward conclusion. Major Dietrich eventually submitted his detailed analysis to German military high command regarding American provisioning systems and implications for German military prospects. His analysis documented American field kitchens, American ration systems, American soldier caloric intake, and German equivalents for comparison. His analysis calculated that American soldiers received approximately 2 to 3 times more calories than German soldiers received. His analysis noted that American food was superior quality compared to German food. His analysis noted that American soldiers received variety while German soldiers received monotony. His analysis concluded that American military possessed logistical advantage that German military could not overcome or match. The implications were clear to any military officer. German military was losing not merely battles but losing competition in provisioning soldiers. The recognition of this asymmetry contributed to German acceptance that military defeat was inevitable. The contrast between American field kitchens and German field kitchens represented microcosm of broader contrast between American military industrial capacity and German military industrial capacity fundamentally. American military could produce enough food to provision millions of soldiers. American military could transport that food across oceans to European theater. American military could distribute that food through sophisticated logistics systems. American military could cook that food in field kitchens and serve to soldiers. All of this represented manifestation of American industrial might. German military could not match any of these capabilities. German military could not produce adequate food. German military could not transport food effectively. German military could not distribute food through intact logistics systems. German military could not provision soldiers adequately. The recognition that American military possessed such capabilities suggested that German military faced defeat unless it could somehow reverse fundamental industrial and logistical disadvantages. The American field kitchens continued their operations as American forces advanced through Germany itself in 1945. American soldiers continued to receive hot meals prepared in field conditions. American soldiers continued to receive adequate nutrition. American soldiers continued to receive variety in diet. The continuation of American military provisioning even in combat conditions demonstrated American commitment to soldier welfare and American confidence in military capability and ultimate victory. The contrast with German military situation was stark and undeniable. German soldiers were starving. American soldiers were well-fed. The contrast represented fundamental difference between military systems and between nations engaged in warfare. The story of Wehrmacht, officers observing American field kitchens and recognizing that German soldiers were starving in comparison represented moment when military leadership confronted observable evidence of German military inferiority in fundamental provisioning of soldiers. The recognition contributed to German acceptance that military defeat was inevitable. The recognition contributed to German willingness to surrender when surrender became possible. The recognition contributed to German acknowledgement that continued warfare served no purpose if soldiers could not be provisioned adequately. The American field kitchens represented not merely cooking equipment but representation of American military capability and American military resources. The American field kitchens represented manifestation of American will to provision soldiers well even in field conditions. The American field kitchens represented difference between nations and between military systems that made American military victory inevitable. Given sufficient time and continued resource availability,